Hey, 8th grade. This week's artwork focuses on space. So space is where in 2D art, so like a flat piece of paper, you create depth or you make something appear like it's popping off the page. So for our project, we're inspired by Horton Hears a Who, and we're going to create a city on top of a flower, and a animal or a monster or a person will be holding the flower. I chose to go with a monster arm. Just to make my artwork look a little more whimsical. So we are going to be using 2-point perspective. Unfortunately, we didn't get to 3-point perspective, which is what we typically do in 8th grade. So we are going to review 2-point perspective from 7th grade when you learned it. So I'm going to take you through how to draw the city in 2-point perspective, and then how to kind of arrange the flower and the hand. Now remember, with those type of items, you can get really creative with it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with. So let's get started with this project. For this project, you're going to need a pencil eraser, because we're going to be drawing a lot of lines and erasing them. A couple different types of markers. I have like a thin and a thicker version. Remember, if you don't have these supplies, you can improvise. And then a ruler. If you don't have a ruler, you can use a piece of cardboard or like the straight edge of like a folder or a binder. So we are going to start by drawing the buildings. So I want you to kind of fold your paper in half, and I'm going to press down at the two edges so that we can put our two vanishing points. So after I've drawn my vanishing point, this is like the horizon line, but we don't need the horizon line. So that's why we kind of just use the fold to figure out where the two vanishing points were going to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start pretty much like towards the center. Now, down below, I'm leaving some space because that's where I'm going to draw like the flower and then the like the hand holding it. So I'm going to take the top of the line, connect it to this vanishing point. I'm going to take this one and connect it to this vanishing point. Then I'm going to do the same for the bottom. Because the bottom is closer to the horizon line here, it's going to be much flatter than the top part. So now I need a parallel line. So I'm lining up the line, and to make sure that it stays parallel, I try to move the ruler evenly across. And that is one side of the building. I'm going to go back and push it forward. And this is the second side of the building. Now, I highly recommend erasing your lines because it can get a little confusing once we start adding like the other buildings. So, I'm going to add another building. I'm going to keep it pretty close to this side. So I'm going to draw a straight line up and down, and this building's going to be taller than the front building. So, I still have to make sure though that I go past the horizon line because it makes it a little complicated if we go above it. So I am then going to draw a line down. If I wanted to, I could continue it this way, but this other building's blocking it, so I can stop. Then I am going to connect this bottom line to this vanishing point. Okay. And again, I know that building's there blocking it, so like there's no need for me to connect it all the way to the vanishing point. So I'm going to go down like this and go down like this. And then this side, I'm going to draw the parallel line. And I'm only erasing this part here because this side of the building goes behind the front building. Okay, so I am going to make another parallel line. And that is my second building. Now, you can see how steep this looks up here. It is correct. It's just the exaggerated top of the like building because it's in perspective. So I'm going to add one last building. Remember, when I start my line, I do want it below the horizon line. So I'm just barely going underneath, but it's still important that you do that, because if you go above, then you have to worry about drawing the bottom of the building, and we don't want to do that for this project. So I'm going to connect the top line to this vanishing point. Remember, if you want to, you can keep continuing to connect it, but I know that I have to erase it eventually, so I'm just stopping there. Now, I'm going to connect it to this side, connect it to this vanishing point, and same thing over here. It's running into that building, so I'm going to stop there. Then parallel line right there, and then another parallel line over here. And there is my series of 3 buildings. Whoop, almost knocked over the camera. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add just a couple details, like maybe a door and a couple windows. We're not going to get too fancy. So I'm going to add a door. When I'm adding a door, I'm going to start with my parallel lines. This is going to be a really tall door, actually. Because I am on the right side, I'm going to use the right side of the paper vanishing point. So I'm going to connect it. And there is door 1. Okay? Now, let's say we're doing a window on the left side. I'm going to draw the 2 parallel lines. And then I'm going to connect it to the left side vanishing point. So, lines that are vertical, that's the straight up and down lines. These lines here are straight. They're parallel to each other. The only time we're connecting the lines is if they're the horizontal lines, the ones that are sideways. Those get connected. And I can add some designs to the buildings too. So maybe I want a stripe at the top. I can do that. Just remember, left side goes to the left vanishing point. Right side goes to the right vanishing point. So there's one. Let's see. I think I'm going to fit a little window up here. So I'm going to draw a line here and a line here. Now, let's say I wanted to make these a bunch of windows in a row. I use my parallel lines and I draw them. And let's see, maybe I'm going to add in a little skinny door off to the side here. And maybe a large window here. Since I'm on the right side, I have to go to the right vanishing point. And then erase my lines. All right, and then I think over here, I'm just gonna add a small little door. Add my parallel lines. Since it's on the left side, I connect to the left vanishing point. Okay, so I have my buildings. Oh, if I wanted to, I could always add stripes like that if you want. You can do the same thing going across. It's up to you. You guys can get creative with these projects. So I have the basics for my building. Now I'm going to kind of sketch the flower I want. So I'm going to start by adding petals. And I'm going to design a flower and a hand around it. Now, for the hand, in Horton Hears a Who, it's the elephant trunk, but I want you to be creative. You can have a hand holding it, you can have a paw holding it, totally up to you. Okay, you can see that I've drawn my flower now, and I kind of sketched out an arm. I ran out of a space at the bottom, so my arm's going off the page. So if yours does that, that's totally fine too. But I think I'm going to go for more like of a monster paw, like holding the flower. So after you've gotten to the stage, you are going to trace and marker and then add color. So I'm going to show you how we can shade the buildings after we trace everything. Okay, now that I'm done tracing, I also erased kind of the pencil marks, so just to clean up the artwork. So what you're going to do is you're going to determine where the light source is. So for me, I'm going to make it in this top corner. So that tells me how I'm going to shade the buildings. So what I'm going to do is the sides that are facing the light source over here are going to be lighter. So that is going to be this side. And notice I'm going around like the window and door because I'm going to add details later, or color to the details later. So I'm going to make this lighter too. And the way we're coloring it is going to make the buildings appear more 3D. Now, again, I'm using crayons. If you don't have crayons, you can shade this with pencil or use color pencil or oil pastels or break out the watercolor paints. It is totally up to you. Okay, now I'm taking my darker color and I'm coloring in the darker color on the other side of the building so it gives it more of a 3D look. Okay, so now that I have the sides shaded in, what you're going to do is you're going to add color to everything else. I'm going to keep in mind that my light source is up here. So when I'm shading in the flower and like the monster, like the sides that are closest to that light source are going to be lighter, where it's darker, where it's further away over here. And that's just going to make my artwork look more realistic, or as realistic as it can be with buildings popping out of a flower. So I'm going to continue with coloring everything else. So I finished up coloring and I'm done with this project. I used a lot of value when I was coloring. So the light source is coming from over here. So I made sure I showed that in the flower and also in the monster arm. Remember, you don't have to do the same type of flower or like the same type of arm holding the flower. You can be really creative with this, okay? So I am looking forward to seeing your imagination in these 2-point perspective Flower City artworks.